All right, guys, we're back. So do you remember last week I was live, I think it was on Friday, and I was talking about the fiasco between, amongst other things, but the fiasco between MassDOT, Global Partners, and Applegreen. Well, believe it or not, things have escalated even further. And honestly, as they should. I'll tell you right now, this is one of the most mind-boggling deals I've seen in a very, very long time. Here's like the short version of what's going on, just to kind of catch you up to speed and not repeat myself. So Global Partners is a Massachusetts-based Fortune 500 company, and they are accusing the state's own transportation agency of running this like tainted or secretive process to award one of the biggest public contracts that I've seen in a very, very long time. And now they're taking it to court. The case is Global Partners versus the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. Yes, that's right. Apparently, there are some levels of conflicts of interest here, amongst other things, and we're going to talk about this today. Now, at the center of this, it's not just about who won the contract. That's like a piece of the puzzle. But what's more important is how it was decided, okay? And listen, I said this the other day, just looking at the numbers alone, none of this makes any sense to me. And again, let me tell you, I've been in real estate for over 11 years. I know quite a bit about deals, and this one stands out to me because I'm telling you, as I said on the live stream, something shady is happening on the back end of this specific deal. Every single time we are doing a transaction or whatever it may be, if you lose out on a lower bid or like, there's always a backstory to this. There's always some levels of influence one way or another. And I really think that something is going on here. And guess what? According to the lawsuit, that's exactly what might be going on here. So today, we're talking about conflicts of interest. We're talking about mysterious rule changes, and we're talking about flat out withholding public records requests, okay? So let's start right from the top. Scott Bosworth, you might remember him. We talked about him on Friday of last week during the live stream. He is the head of MassDOT's selection committee, and Global Partners is now saying that Bosworth was looking for a job with you-know-who, Blackstone, the same giant private equity firm that just so happens to own Applegreen, the company that won the bid. You can't make this stuff up, guys. This is Massachusetts. It's ridiculous here. And he was doing this right before the bidding process even started. So I think what that means is that he was effectively negotiating potential future employment prior to this deal moving forward. Now, Massachusetts does have something called a conflict of interest law, and it's pretty clear. It's pretty self-explanatory. It says something along the lines of like, no state employee can act in a way that would make a reasonable person think they might be improperly influenced. That is unless they disclosed it in writing. And according to this lawsuit, there was absolutely no such disclosure. But wait, it gets even better. Because under Bosworth's leadership, MassDOT changed the rules of the bid. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 5 times, okay? The last change was on April 1st of 2025. And it just so happens to include massive tweaks that ended up benefiting the private equity, I'm having trouble today, private equity-backed companies like Applegreen. So I'll explain it like this. There was 3 things in total. The first was that they extended the lease term from 30 to 35 years. They also cut the insurance requirements in half, but the big one here is that they removed something called the guarantor requirement. Now, you might be asking, why is this such a big deal? Well, because without that rule, the winning company doesn't have to put up their parent company's money or their parent company's assets, basically put them up on the line if the project goes sideways or just blows up, okay? So basically, they can create a smaller separate company for this one job. They could sign the lease as a smaller company, okay? And they could also borrow money that they need under that separate company and still run the project. But if it fails, and this is the big one, if it fails, that little company, if they go bankrupt, the parent company almost walks away untouched. And guess who's left holding the bag? The taxpayers. And obviously whoever lent them the money, the creditors, whoever they may be. Now, you might be thinking the same thing that I was thinking when I read this. And it's, wouldn't this change benefit both companies unilaterally? And the answer is a little complicated. It's a yes, but it's also a no. And here's why. It's because Global is a massive company, and they're a very established company with a long history here in Massachusetts. And they normally don't hide projects in these shell companies just to dodge risk and or limit their liability. Mainly due to the fact that their proposal, their original proposal, was backed by their actual business. Applegreen, on the other hand, is backed by private equity, and that's like their bread and butter. So they can set up a special purpose company. They can load that special purpose company with debt and then keep the parent company insulated, okay? They're basically limiting their liability. So when you remove this guarantor requirement, you're basically just supercharging the way that they could operate. So look at it like this. It's almost like MassDOT is bending over backwards to cut a deal that works against their own best interest, while like gift wrapping Applegreen a massive opportunity with all of the upside and almost no downside. And by the way, we're just getting started here, because Global, they also say that the decision-making process itself was a total mess. It was a disaster. They claim that they got an email telling them that they lost the bid the morning of June 11th. Now, remember, this is before the committee was supposed to vote on this, right? This was before the committee even met, which means that the committee was nothing more than just a rubber stamp that Applegreen got this contract. The lawsuit even cites the meeting minutes where some of the directors were like raising these concerns and asking for more detailed comparison of the bids, which I would think makes some sense. But according to Global, those comparisons, they never showed up before the final vote. Then what happened is Bosworth presented to the board on June 18th. They said he only showed up an incomplete summary of Applegreen's bid. And then when someone asked about the other bids, he literally flat out said he didn't want to talk about them. Again, you can't make this stuff up. Seems very convenient to me. Oh, and those minor details that he skipped over, have you looked into Applegreen? Okay. According to the lawsuit, Applegreen has a track record that includes blown deadlines, budget disasters, and even a $260 million taxpayer bailout request on their past projects. None of that information made it through. So basically, the board got all of the highlights and none of the bloopers. That's what happened here, okay? So let's move forward. Global said that they started hearing from these different sources that there had been improper communications between the officials of MassDOT and the representatives from Applegreen, Blackstone, and Suffolk Construction. Now, Suffolk Construction, I think, is going to be a major player here, in my opinion, because they are a major, major contractor that is tied to winning that proposal. So they ended up filing four separate, meaning Global, they ended up filing like four separate public records requests under state law. They wanted emails, they wanted text messages, they wanted meeting notes, and conflict of interest disclosures, basically the whole 9 yards, right? But MassDOT, their response, just like anything else, I'm experiencing this right now too with the request that we filed for something completely irrelevant of this, but they're dragging their feet. And they've been handing Global just bits and pieces here and there. Or even sometimes they just flat out said no with giving any legal reason. But the stuff that they did release is still pretty eye-opening, which leads me to believe the stuff that they didn't release is probably even more damning. And some of the things that did come out, we kind of talked about. Those were emails from Bosworth congratulating Applegreen's executives on the same day that the board approved the deal, and then setting up meetings within that same day to talk the project details, so on and so forth within the hour, okay, or within the next few hours. There are multiple back and forths between Suffolk Construction months before the award, talking about like legislation, having different meetings and getting introductions from like these big names in local construction, okay? So now Global is basically saying that all of these arrows point in the same direction, that all of this points to one thing, and that is that the winning bidder had access and influence that no one else had the opportunity to partake in. It's like the winning bidder was already inside the club while everybody else was just waiting in line. That's really what this is like. Now, this lawsuit does stop short of like accusing anyone of breaking the law, at least outright, but they are saying the appearance and maybe the reality of some levels of favoritism is so strong that the courts need to step in at this point, because again, it just doesn't make sense. That's the key detail here. And now the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking because the lease for Applegreen is set to be signed on November 3rd of this year, 2025. And Global is asking the court to force MassDOT to hand over any and all records now and basically hit pause on this deal until those records are reviewed, which I think is the right thing to do here. So if the judge does agree, we might actually see the full picture of how this thing really went down. And like, if not, and this deal does go through, all of this stuff is going to stay behind closed doors. And that's a big no-no to me, guys. I want to figure out how this stuff happens. And I'll be honest with you guys, to me, again, this isn't about losing the bid. It's not about losing the contract. It's about calling out what they say is a culture of this like secrecy, favoritism, and bending the rules to suit some people, but not others. It's absolutely ridiculous. So the lawsuit has been filed, and I'm going to stay on top of this. And I also think there's something shady, something else that's shady that's going on the back end, and I'm doing a little bit of investigative research myself. But anyway, that's what's up to speed. That's what's happening with MassDOT. As I said earlier, completely ridiculous. And that's it for today's video, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.